Welcome to Under the Fig Tree podcast. In today's episode, hosts Reverend Micah Glenn and Reverend Dr. Ben Haupt talk theology and life as they meditate under the fig tree.
What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Under the Fig Tree podcast. I am your host, Reverend Micah Glenn, Director of Recruitment here at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, joined by highly esteemed, highly accredited co-host, Caitlin.
No.
It is Catherine. Sometimes I just get too excited and too ahead of myself. Kati Gaschler, everybody.
There are worse things you could have called me.
But you know what? As I was thinking about guessing your middle name the other time, I have this, everybody has an internal dialogue. I was just having this internal dialogue with the importance of names earlier today. Catherine A. Gaschler. If you want to know what that A stands for, you all have to watch every episode of Under the Fig Tree until you find the one where I guessed it properly. Yep. Yeah, so enjoy it, everybody. But we're joined by another highly esteemed, highly accredited, and highly anticipated guest on the podcast.
Sweet, I didn't know. Awesome.
Mrs. Jessica Bordeleau. I won't call you Mrs. Jessica for the whole podcast, but just for the introduction. I'm a fanfare for fanfare's sake is a good cause.
Okay. Yeah. Is Mrs. Fanfare? I guess.
Yeah.
Can be.
Introducing somebody as Mrs. Jessica Bordeleau by her full name, it raises her up.
The more syllables you include, the more fanfare.
See, now, I think this is a Southern sign of hospitality. Because I grew up in Wisconsin, and people would call me Jessica. I moved to St. Louis, which feels Southern, Miss Jessica. Yeah. The polite kids would call me Miss Jessica. I'm like, what's that?
I'm a certain man kind of guy.
Yeah,
and
you're just being polite.
It's not even age. I say ma'am to children as well. It's just signs of respect.
That's fair.
Yeah. Yep. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So, Jessica, you are one of our colleagues here at the seminary, but I have to confess, while I typically look at people's directory information before I have them on, and I would have told everybody what you do for the seminary, I did not do that today, a little unprepared. So would you please educate our listeners on your role at the seminary?
Well, we know what she does, but
first
I don't
tell
know
me
your
what you think
title.
I do. What do you think I do?
Oh.
I know you host a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
I want to say that it has to, I don't know, Jessica. I don't want to, maybe something, I don't think we have, I would say PR, but that would be over in comms. So that's not who you
PR,
are.
No.
Something with publications, I imagine, because of the podcast. And I don't know if that includes print. Oh, is your role have to do with like audio? We don't do a ton of visual. It has to do something with
I'll just tell you, Micah. I'll just help
Thank you.
So for the last year and a half, I've been the digital, the actual title, digital publication coordinator. But what I actually do, I work in the Department of Theological Research and Publications. So it's the department that does concordiatheology.org.
Yep.
Check it out. And does the Concordia Journal, which is that book that comes out quarterly with essays and things. So that's the department that I work in.
Got it.
There's like 4 of us. And then they hired me to do digital media about a year and a half ago. Mostly these 2 podcasts that I do. So I produce 2 podcasts. One is weekly and one is twice a month. And I'd love to tell you all about them.
And we would love to hear about both.
But first.
We'll get there. Only because, in all fairness, Katie probably will at some point, but Ben is the rigid person, the rigid host of the podcast.
Oh, no.
Who watches the clock, who has like our internal schedule.
Structure.
And rigidly follows it. And I'm unwilling to play that role.
That's not me. Yeah. Just let it go with the flow.
And so we just, that's what typically
find out about
one of the
people.
earlier questions we ask. Actually, no, it's not one of the typically. Anyway, we'll just move forward. Jessica, how are you, and how's life at the moment?
I'm doing well. Life is good. It's busy. My kids have spring break next week, so it'll be a good break.
Are your kids both at Word of Life as well?
I have 3 kids, an 8th grader, a 5th grader, and a 3rd grader. So some of them overlap with yours.
Yep,
Yeah,
sure.
about right in the same age area.
Talitha and your 3rd grader are in the same class. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they're in the same Sunday school because we go to church with you.
And they have an award-winning Teacher of the Year as their teacher, Mrs. Sarah Thompson.
You should have her on the show.
LEA Teacher of the Year.
Yes, and she is awesome. She's great.
How to be great. No, she's incredible. Yeah. Jessica and I go to the same church, Timothy.
There's so many seminary people that go there.
It is actually.
We were just talking about that with Dr. Kolb, and you guys were just naming all these people. I thought we had a lot at Holy Cross. No.
Holy Cross has a few. So it's interesting. We were not church shopping, but we were moving our kids to Word of Life. And so we wanted to find an association church. And so we started looking one Sunday, and this is when I was still in my vacancy. And so we stopped at Timothy, and it was in the cycle of like, okay, I'll go to church with you and the kids at the early service. You stay for Bible study. I go be a vacancy pastor. And in that time, Dorothy, because there's options for Sunday school, Jessica invited Dorothy to her Bible study group. And then I came home, Dorothy came home, and she's like, that's where I'd like to go to church. I was like, okay, perfect.
And we love that you were there.
Oh, Timothy is incredible. It
is a special church.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A ton of things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids are now heavily involved in the music and things like that.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
We sit around and chit-chat during Bible study hour. Mm-hmm. And they gratefully listen to me ramble every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Next week we start Ecclesiastes, so come ready.
Yeah, we're doing wisdom literature right now.
That's my favorite book of the Bible.
Is it?
Sweet. Do you want to come to Timothy on Sunday?
Sure.
I'd love to have you. We're doing the Bible Project.
I love the
videos.
Bible Project
Yes,
too.
Seriously. Talk to me after the show. You can help me teach the class. I would love for you to come.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
We'll
Done.
figure it out.
Okay.
Teach the class. What did I get myself into?
You can do it.
Oh boy.
That'd be fun. You should come.
Yeah.
She's agreeing to this, but her husband's a pastor.
He doesn't have to come.
He doesn't have to come.
This is true.
Minor detail.
If he's busy, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Do you guys have kids?
No, not yet.
Mm-hmm.
No. So I just get to sit there in Bible study and learn, which right now is Dr. Gibbs is teaching our Bible study.
Oh, nice.
But
That's
he
hard to
was
Yeah.
he was on vacation, so Paul did he was supposed to do just a quick overview of divine service and what we do in divine service. It was not quick. It wasn't an overview. We got so in the weeds, so deep that Dr. Gibbs was like, why don't you just take the next week too? So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this right here is how we ended up at Timothy. Yeah. And, no, we love it. And so, Jessica, other than being members here and other than being the digital publications person, I'm sure there's a title.
That works.
You know what?
Well, it's confusing though because the seminary has a communications department and they have but I'm not part of those. I'm one of the unique media workers in that I'm in a theological department and I'm creating content. And
Which is awesome.
And then I do the technical stuff too. So it's very different and it's confusing. I can't take credit for all the great things that you guys do here at this podcast or credit for all the great things that the communications department does. So
I mean, you can. Who's going to know?
God will know.
Okay.
God will know.
Fair enough. Well, we derailed you a little bit. Yeah, please continue to tell us a little more about yourself.
Okay. At what age would you like me to start?
Wherever you would like to start.
Way back at the beginning.
Let's
Do it.
I grew up in Milwaukee.
Nice.
And I'll start by telling you when I started getting interested in church work jobs. Does that sound good?
Please.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Milwaukee. My parents became Christians when I was about 4. And so like my whole life changed at that point, and I remember the change. Like things were different because someone invited them to church.
Look at that.
Yeah, they're like, hey, do you want to come to church? And my parents were at a stage in life where they could use something, they needed something. So they started coming, and they kept coming, and then they became members. And yeah, so praise God for the ways that church loved my parents. It was a small city church, a lot like Timothy.
Sure.
Well, which is why I think maybe I like it so much. But so then after that, my parents, they wanted to send me to Christian schools. Neither of them had been raised Lutheran or anything. I'm half Irish, so there's not a lot of Lutheran Irish people. They were all Catholic.
Right.
But the church that they were invited to was a Lutheran church. And so they're like, well, let's send them to Lutheran schools. So they worked hard to be able to do that for my brothers and I. And that was life-changing because I was surrounded with an environment of people who loved Jesus. Not like all the kids were good because we weren't, a bunch of punks. But the teachers really cared about Jesus, and they made an environment where living out your faith was embraced and developed. And my high school, my Lutheran high school, it was great. I mean, you're at a stage in life where you need that kind of influence. So the National Study of Youth and Religion, and it's like a 15-year-old study at this point now, but they did a study on the things that influence whether or not young adults would say that they are connected to a church or that they had faith. And the number one influence was actually parents, which you would think when you're a teenager, you don't want your parents, you need friends. But the second one, and these were the only ones that had really any significance, the numbers for everything else, peers was low, media was low, whatever, it was non-parent adults at their church, non-parent adults that were active in their faith life. So those non-parent adults, my high school teachers, had a huge impact in forming who I am and then me wanting to become a church worker.
Sure.
Yeah, I can see that. So that's a similar story. Well, that's a similar sentiment to what Paul has said when at our last church, we didn't have a ton of kids. And so, we had some people a little bit concerned, wanting to maybe try a bigger church with more kids because they want, Christian friends, which good,
That's
should.
important. That's totally important.
Yeah. But Paul would say, of all the kids in my confirmation class, I don't talk to any, but I still talk to my pastor from that time. So,
it's true.
yeah, doesn't surprise me.
Statistically, for any adult at a church, if you greet a child by their name on Sundays, the stats go up a step that they will still be connected to a church and as a young adult.
Yep.
Blows my mind. It's huge. And that, youth ministry, obviously, that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I started with.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about this recently, and it's something that I do intentionally. So at Vocatio,
Yes.
they wear name badges, and then I go around, and so I've been looking at their names, where they've come from, and then they've been checking in, so I can begin to get an idea of some names. And the goal is that before they leave, I can just look at them and call them out by name, and I do this thing. And they get to spend a little extra time with me if I can't remember their name. So if I can't do your name, you can't leave. So, and it's not just like a statistic thing. If I remember their names,
oh no,
they're gonna be. It is really just a genuine interest in who you are, and your name is important, Catherine.
Right. And it was the building of the relationship,
Exactly.
not so much their name. But that is an example of a way that you say, I know you. I want to know how your day at high school was.
Exactly.
You matter to me. Because when they come home on vacation from college and they go to church, their friends aren't there, but you're still there. And they feel like that could maybe be their home. That church might still be their home. I love youth ministry, and that's what I started out doing because high school was so hard.
Sure.
Middle school and high school stink. It's the hardest part of life. And so I wanted to be a youth worker so that I could help.
Sure. So you've leaned into this a little bit, and you said the reasons why you wanted to begin to pursue church work. But can you fill in the rest of that blank? You're in high school. You're deciding where to go to college.
Yes.
And now you want to be a youth worker. What did that look like, and what's that story?
Well, so I was going to this great high school with these teachers that invested in us and helped us develop our faith.
Milwaukee Lutheran?
I went to Martin Luther. That's on the south side. We're on the south side. Milwaukee Lutheran's on the north side. They were our competitors.
Got it.
Yeah.
I have no vested interest in this, but if you talk about Lutheran North versus Lutheran
It's
South,
true. It's all that way. No, I went to Martin Luther High School.
Okay.
Shout out to my people who are still there. Yeah. Yes. So then in the summer, I would go to the Lutheran summer camp because they would come to school and they'd promote it and you hear about it. And then when I was in high school, I did the 2 weeks of volunteering that a lot of Lutheran camps do. So you're junior counselor.
That's awesome.
Life-changing. I was there for 2 weeks, and you get to learn from the college student counselors how to how to take care of these kids, how to give devotions, how to make sure they're okay, help them when they're scared. By the end of that week, I'm like, this is what I need to be doing. I need to tell kids about Jesus. This is what I want to do. And so it was that experience that really, that was forming for me. And so then I did that the next summer, and then I went to a Concordia so that I could keep working with kids. And I went to Concordia, Wisconsin. Where'd you guys go to?
I graduated from there.
You did?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I started at Ann Arbor and then transferred to Wisconsin.
Okay. Great school.
I went to Chicago.
Did you?
Yeah.
My husband went to Chicago.
That's where Dorothy and I met as well. So.
Did you know Adrian? He was only there a year, though, because then he went to film school and he went to CSP.
But when I went there, I just say I'm a late bloomer. He was probably there before I went there. Age-wise, we're the same. But when I went to Concordia,
Sure.
in like the fall of 2009 is when I started.
Cool. Yeah. So.
Anyway.
Yep. Yes. So I went to Mequon to be a teacher and continued to work at camps all the summers. And it was, it got me through the rest of the school year. Like, I loved it. So Lutheran Elementary Ed was my major, and I have a minor in theology and a minor in speech communications.
Nice.
It was a good fit. I liked it. I graduated from high school when I was 17. So I was super young, and I just turned 18 a couple weeks before I moved on campus. So I was really young and immature and kind of wide-eyed, And so being able to be in a Christian environment when I was maturing, I definitely needed to mature more. Like,
Sure.
if you knew me in college and you knew me now, I'm a different adult. I really feel like I was a kid.
I think that's generally a good thing.
Yeah.
Probably pretty normal.
But I hope, I don't know. But going to those Lutheran camps in the summer and the profs on campus continued to help form me during those still formative years. I think they're still formative.
I say very similar things. I have high praise for the young men and young women who, from high school, go to Concordia for a church work program, both to become a DCE, so you get your first call when you're 22, 23. For the guys that are pre-sem that end up here when they're 22, 23, and then become a pastor when they're 26 or 27. For what, I obviously, what ifs, but I know also maturity wise, had I been like a pre-seminary student when I was 18, maybe even through 22, I just wasn't ready for this. And not just this, what I do now, but coming to the seminary, becoming a student. So that kind of developmental maturity delay where I tried college, took a break, and then went back a little bit older. So when I went back to Concordia, Chicago, I was 25, different space, serious about school, serious about the task, was the right, perfect timing. So I whenever somebody's, because I get to interact with so many young people, when I see that, it's not that I wish I had that, but I deeply respect and admire my classmates from Concordia and from here that went that path. It's just, I think it's remarkable.
For me, it was great.
Sure.
Like I said, I was real immature and young, and that was helpful. And there's different areas of maturity.
Of course.
Right?
Yep.
And so, like you said, if somebody is considering a church work job, but they don't feel ready in all the areas yet, you don't need to go one path. There's a lot of different paths that you could take.
Yep.
And just because you start one doesn't mean you can't switch too, because I definitely did.
And also be like a perpetual learner.
Sure.
And grower. That's just something I truly aspire to be.
So went to school to be a teacher, thought I was going to be a teacher the rest of my life. But I went to camp every summer and worked as a counselor. Totally the most intense, wonderful, successful, not efficient, what's the word? Where something is just like, this works. It was a ministry that worked. And I loved it. And then right before I went to student teach, the second half of my student teaching, there was an opening for a full-time position at the camp that I had worked at in northern Wisconsin. I'm like, well, I'll just see. And I got the job. So before I graduated, I had this job to be program director. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this call, and then I'll go be a teacher, And so I took the call, We moved to northern Wisconsin and loved it. Oh, it's such a powerful ministry. So I got, let's see, at that position, I was taking high schoolers on whitewater rafting in inflatable kayaks during the summer. So it was sweet. And so I take a different group out every week. And we would do Bible studies in the woods, and then we would go down the falls in our inflatable kayaks and get crushed by water. And it was great, but the ministry was so intense.
Sure.
They're away from everything. They're in the woods with you. High schoolers, and I'd have college counselors with me, which I basically was the same age as them, you know.
Sure.
But it was powerful, and I saw God work through that and change lives, and also saw God working through the lives of the counselors, like in them too. So I loved it. It was just like, it was a super good fit for me. And I would do it now if I wasn't so old. Like sure. it was sweet. So I did that. And then I'm like, well, I'll teach after that. But then when I was there, I'm like, oh, I want to know more about scripture. I want more theology. I'd had a minor in theology, but I just wanted more. And so I found out that you could get your master's in theology here at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. So that's what I did. I packed up. I moved down here. I rented out an apartment with a friend of mine a couple of blocks down. She was a nursing she wasn't a nursing student. She was a nurse at that time. And I got my master's in systematic theology here. Took 2 years. So it was mostly systems classes, but also some practical. It was a great experience. Now, there wasn't the deaconess program here at that time. So that wasn't an option, and there was like no other women here.
Sure.
I was the only woman in almost all my classes and stuff. But I was just thrilled that I could I just wanted to learn more about God's Word. It wasn't going to certify me for a new position in the LCMS. It was just going to be, I just get to learn this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I'm just going to do it, and then I'll take it, and it'll help me be a better teacher. I'll just be a better teacher after doing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But then I didn't go back to being a teacher. When I moved down here, I was already dating my husband, Adrian.
Okay.
And so then after my first year, we got married, and he did his DCE internship here in the city. So that was great. So then either I would have had to stop school, go with him on his internship, or put off getting married for a year, and we were like, wah, wah, not that. We want to be together.
Right.
And so actually he got his DCE internship at Timothy Lutheran Church, where we go now. So that story is cool. You should have Adrian on the show because it's crazy how God led him to what he's doing, but it's a different story.
Dorothy knows everybody a little more than I do, naturally, because her and the kids have been going there for a while now. And I feel like in passing I heard Adrian talk about being the DCE intern at Timothy, but for some reason I knew you were DCE, and I thought I made the connection. When he said it, I just assumed you were the DCE intern, and not him. But yeah, that's interesting.
But I was a DCE at Timothy later, so very confusing.
Look at that. Okay, now it is very. See, my mind is scrambled.
Okay, I'll start again. So I came here, got my master's.
Can you draw?
No, I'm just messing around. It's clear. Yeah.
Can you draw it?
Sure?
Yeah, I am.
I'll act it out.
There we go.
Okay. So then you're going to cut that, right? Dale, you're going to cut that.
This is all good content.
He said no.
No, don't keep my sass. Cut my sass out of here.
No, that's what brings the people here.
No one wants a sass mouth.
This also is staying in the podcast. This whole deliberation. It's good stuff, yeah. So, you're married.
Yes.
At post-internship or during the internship?
During the
There we go.
internship.
Let's pick up from there.
Right. Okay, I've got to tell this story. It's not part of I'm just going to tell it anyway. It's not how I became a church worker, but it is the power of the church and how it influences church workers. Can I tell a tangent story?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm a graduate student here at Concordia Seminary, and I'm like, I get to pick whatever church I want. That's never going to happen, because when I'm a teacher, I'll go to church where I work.
Right.
And when I was at camp, we lived in the woods. There was the one church that was within driving distance, which was awesome. So looking for a church, and I went to all these different churches to see how do they treat new people. I felt like I was undercover, like, you don't know, but I'm a church worker.
Right.
So some churches give you a mug. I got a coffee mug as a visitor at a church. Some of them just send you a form letter, and I'm like, oh, lame. One of them dropped off a loaf of bread at my door. or maybe they mailed it. No, maybe it's, so that was kind of cool. I was a little freaked out about eating food that just someone left there, but that was a nice
The
thought.
thought was nice.
Right. So Timothy is very close to the seminary, so I tried that one out. And they had Monday night church, which was great for a student because I'd stay up all night doing homework, and then I could sleep on Sundays and go on Monday. So at that time, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, well, I'll try this one out. And I went, and then I went again, and I filled out the little card they give you. And I think I tried a different church. I don't remember. And then in my little apartment down the road, I get a knock at the door, and I open it. And there's this huge pastor, Pastor Rawl. He's like 6'3". He's this big dude. He's not really 6'3", but he is big.
Sure.
And so he was like, hello. And he's like, hi, I'm the pastor at the church you visited. I thought I'd come and say hi. I was like, that's amazing. So I said, come in. I revealed my church worker identity. And I was like, this is great outreach. This is awesome. Good job. And he's like, well, we'd like to get a director of Christian outreach intern because we really want to keep going that way. And I was like, how about a DCE intern and you hire my fiance to come down here? And he's like, we could talk about that. And then he did. And so that's how Adrian got his internship at Timothy and how I got to finish my whole degree and us get married that year. So there it is. The Timothy story doesn't end, but I'll come back to that.
Sure.
Okay. So then we go back to St. Paul, Minnesota, so that he can finish his last year of classes. And I took a call at a church to be a DCE. Now, I'm not certified as a DCE because that's a specific certification in the LCMS. Certified as a teacher, rostered as a teacher.
Sure.
And then my master's in theology here. And so.
But you're callable.
Right. And so I did the job of a DCE. At a church, did youth ministry, led Bible studies, taught confirmation, everything that I loved to do. It was great. And then the camp called us back, and they're like, we don't have anyone for the summer. We've got this big gap. You just want to come out here, for a while. And we're like, oh, should I take a call? Should we do that? And we're like, no question. We're going to camp. Sure. So then both of us went to that camp, and we both worked full-time there. And we did that for 2 years. And it was great. I had a different kind of role at the camp that summer. I got to train the counselors and be in charge of the youth camp and all the counselors. I loved it. I loved the young adult ministry, the youth ministry. So that's all very powerful things. Those are powerful things in my life and kind of, but see, still not a teacher. And I'm like, I'll go do that for a while and then I'll be a teacher after that. But then after that, I got a call to come back to St. Louis and work in the youth ministry department at Synod, the department that does the National Youth Gathering. Yep. And so I'm like, go help with the youth gathering? Sweet.
100%.
Yeah. Did Lutheran Youth Fellowship. That's like what I was coordinating, which was a high school leadership training program. It was awesome, and it's still going. The name is now Youth Lead.
Youth Lead, yep.
Yeah, so promotion to that, do Youth Lead. If you're in high school, that's a good place to start, and you'll be right here by Vocatio. You learn everything. The
director of that program, Juliana Schultz, an incredible DC. Well, she's a DCO by training, I think.
I don't know. She came after me. I don't know.
An incredible worker and director of that program, 100%. If you're listening in high school or you know some high schoolers and leadership is their direction, and even if it's not, if it's something that you want to encourage somebody, look up Youth Lead. It's an incredible program.
Yes.
100%.
That was the part of my job that I loved the most because I got to mentor the teens that lead all of the workshops at the teen retreat. Yeah. So I had 5 high schoolers for 3 years. They were in this role. I would train them, and then they would teach the other teens at this 4-day long training conference, this retreat. So all of the leading was done by teens, for teens. Yeah. And so that is empowering because then the other teens in the room are like, I can do this. I can share my faith. They're sharing their faith. They're not old. They're like me. So that's what I did when I was there. And where would you go to church if you're back in St. Louis? But the church where Adrian spent his internship and where I went. So then we started going to Timothy again. And still not being a teacher, right? So I'm doing this job, and I just really missed all the hands-on part about being in a church, the teaching, the Bible studies, and confirmation class and stuff. And so I knew that it was going to be a better fit for me to look for that kind of ministry than working at the synodical level and planning the events and stuff. I just missed it so much. And I still wanted to do aspects of it, but I knew that I was called to a different area of ministry.
Yeah.
And so I went back to Pastor Rawl and said, hey, what if you hire me as your part-time DCE? You don't have a DCE, you might want to, and he was like, we could talk about that. And then he did. So then I was part-time DCE at Timothy and then continued to do LYF part-time at Synod. So it was a good matchup for what my gifts were. Still not teaching in a classroom, though. Crazy.
Is she ever going to get there? I don't know.
Lots of life to live.
I don't know. There's more to the story, right?
Right. This is not done yet. And then we started a family. And so then I wanted to work part-time, not work full-time.
Yeah.
I know when my kids were little. So then I kept doing the LYF stuff part-time. It became contracted instead of in the office, which was great for, being home with the kids. So got to have 2 vocations that I loved, getting to be the mom and getting to do LYF things with the teens there. And this is where it gets even crazier. So part of LYF was preparing the curriculum that was taught at these. I keep hitting the cord on your
it's fine.
mic.
There,
how about that? There you go. Was to prepare curriculum with different speakers. Each year had a different speaker to make the curriculum that would be taught at the event. And we wanted it to be multimedia. But every year, like to find one, there weren't that many out there. There wasn't the kind of media production available. So my husband, who went to school to be a DCE, also never was a DCE, and got his master's in media literacy, and has always loved videography and stuff. And so he started going that route, and he was as a media producer. So I needed media developed. And so we worked together, and we would get a speaker in town, and they would speak for the videos. My husband would produce them, and then I would do the written part of the curriculum. And we did that, there's 6 years of us doing that together. And so that was kind of my start in media production. And he's got his own videography business, and I would be his production assistant. Sure. So I would just go help him. And that's what I got to... That's where I learned a lot of the media production skills that I use now. And he works at LCMS Foundation. He's their creative director, and he does videography for them. And he still does videography contract work on the side, too.
Sure.
So there I am doing media, mostly video at that time. But then I started to do other contract work. I did some contract work at Lutheran Ministries and produced monthly webinars for them for a while. Still just contracted because I had kids at home. And then I wrote I produced some other short Bible study videos for them, and I was a speaker. I wrote some of in the LHM Learn program. So I wrote some of those. So in part of that contract work, they had a training conference now, a training morning for people that worked there to talk about the new ideas that they were using and lesson writing and stuff like that. And I happened to sit next to Mike Ziegler. He had gone to my church a couple times. I didn't know him really well, but I didn't know who to sit by, and there was a chair open, so I sat by him. And then he's being his normal, friendly, inclusive self, and he's telling me what he's working on. He's like, I'm planning a new podcast. And I want this podcast to be a weekly conversation about the themes in my Lutheran Hour sermon, because he's a speaker of the Lutheran Hour. And he's like, what do you think of that idea? He's just bouncing off ideas off of me. We start talking about it. And then we kept talking about it after that. And he's like, well, why don't you come to our planning meeting? Just for a creative input, just come along and just be at the meeting. So I'm like, sure, sounds good. So I went, and I kept going to the meetings, and I helped plan it. And he's like, why don't you be my co-host? He's like, why don't you be creative producer and steer the content editing of the conversation? So, boom, now I am doing weekly podcasts with the speaker of the Lutheran Hour as his co-host and as the discussion editor. So, because just like here, we would talk with a group of people for an hour, but the show wasn't an hour. Yeah. So that I didn't do anything technical at that point, but I went through the recording and said, well, cut this part to kind of focus it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for 2 years. And I'd never really listened to podcasts even before that. And then after that, a local grade school wanted a podcast. So I started doing that with them. I still do that, which is fun.
That's awesome.
So you're in a school, not in the classroom, though.
Right.
Not a teacher
and
yet.
this is all contract. This is contract work. Speaking of Jesus, which was the podcast I did at Lutheran Ministries, was just a contract work. The grade school that I do a weekly podcast at is contract work. It's very fun. It's 10 minutes. The principal and I talk about the Bible story that week.
Yeah.
Because K to 8 all does the same Bible story.
Nice.
So then we talk about the story. How can you incorporate this? Oh, it's for parents. How can you incorporate this at home? What questions could you ask? Here's some background about the story. And so I started doing that every week with him as the other podcast ended. So I kept doing that. And then other writing gigs on the side. I wrote some devotion books and, Bible. See, there's a prayer journal. I did some of those for a small publishing house. I did some teacher aiding for my son's class for a year because they didn't have anybody. So that's in a classroom. But it was just a couple of days a week, because I'm doing all these different contract jobs, putting those together. And then, how did I get to the seminary? Dale was there because Eric Herman asked me to come and do a podcast series with Chuck Aaron.
All right.
Because Chuck's all about the care of creation stuff. And I had worked with him a little bit on that in the past because in a different context. So I had worked with him a little bit. He had asked me some questions about some it was about young adults because I was a young adult. But I'm not anymore.
It's all good. Yeah,
so now no one cares what I say about young adults. But so I was, and so we had been talking about that. And so Eric's like, why don't you come and produce a short series of podcasts about care of creation with Chuck Aaron and Eric Herman. And Dale Ward, who is your producer here, you guys can't see him, but he is behind the camera.
Yeah, I talk to Dale quite often.
He does all kinds of work that you don't know about, and he's awesome.
He's the reason why the podcast happens, for sure.
Yes.
I think he needs to be a guest sometime.
Oh.
Yes.
I mean, he is a pastor.
Yes, you should totally. You want to just come here right now? There's room on the couch. He says no.
The man behind the camera.
We'll get him.
Right.
He's instructing us to carry on.
Like, Jessica, shut up. So I came and I did those podcasts, about 6 of them. And I think that kind of started them thinking about, this could be another kind of podcast that the seminary offers where we talk about theological ideas more in depth. We did 6 parts on the care of creation. And after that, the position was created in that department for doing podcasts. And I applied for it. And now I'm here. So still not in the classroom.
No.
But isn't that crazy how God, he directed my path with these opportunities that I didn't even look for.
Oh, I tell people all the time, if you'd have told me to write down the first decade of being a pastor, I couldn't have dreamt of where I've been as a pastor.
Well, you were at LHM too. You were at Lutheran Ministries too.
So we've talked about the podcast. My first call was to be a domestic missionary in Ferguson. Never would have guessed that. And then a year at Lutheran Hour. Now, when I accepted that call, I thought it would be a long time. But a little over 7 months into that call, Ben started asking me to consider this call. We are trained to consider calls in a polite, timely manner. And I'll confess, I did not.
What do you mean, polite, timely
So
manner?
From the time that this call here was extended to the time I accepted, it was almost 2 months. Oh. And every 2 weeks.
That's not timely.
No. And every 2 weeks, Ben we'd check back in. Where you at? Please be patient. Please be gracious. Because life, right? Me and Dorothy were really considering it. And again, this was early on in my career, and it would have been my 3rd call as a pastor, and I graduated in 2016. I didn't want to get into this rhythm of just bouncing around, and you're somewhere for a couple. Anyway, and so I checked back in with Ben. I didn't leave him hanging, but I was like, Dorothy and I and even in those conversations, come up with new questions. Can you answer this question for Dorothy? Anyway, so I I announced that I was accepting this call on my 1-year anniversary at Lutheran as they were handing me a gift card to Starbucks. Yeah. And that time at Lutheran Hour, in 1 year learned so much, not only from the workshops that I hosted, because I did a lot of digital conversations workshops, but the people we worked with, the experience I gained at just 1 year working there and working with the incredible people there, transformative. But you preface something and it'll lean in because podcasting, there's a million of them. I think the stats are like 1,000 new podcasts every day, something
There's
crazy.
so many.
It's not. So not only is it not easy because of the supply, which who's going to listen to what, but Ben and I quickly found out that getting microphones in front of your face and pressing play and speaking sounds easy, but it's not. All that to say, Under the Fig Tree has gone through different things. It's always centered around recruiting, and so we ask especially our incoming students, what they want to hear from the podcast. We generally make those adjustments because if we like to create. You have to have an audience, an intended audience, and that can't be everybody. To the point of saying, when you started the podcast you do, and we're about to ask you about that, it alleviated Under the Fig Tree to not feel like we have to cover the topics that you guys cover.
Sure.
Because I can just say, if you want this type of content, the seminary already provides that, and this is exactly where you can find it. And it allows us, we have theological conversations all the time. And that's part of becoming a church worker, is becoming a theologian. But we focus on something different here.
Right.
Stories.
Right.
To say that you work here, you produced 2 podcasts you do it on our campus before Concordia Seminary. So please, if you don't mind sharing what that work is for our listeners here under the Fig Tree.
I'd be thrilled to. I love talking. I love talking about the ways that God is using the guest on the show. Okay. So I come here, I got the job, and wanted to be able to record conversations with faculty, wanted to be able to specifically do conversations, not sermons. Yep. That there's other locations that they can find sermons. But to start, like you said, what are they looking for? So I got the job. I started working on building a studio in my office. So with the microphones and the preamp and the sound, the noise absorbers on the wall, stuff like that. So I'm building a studio. And whenever I can, I ask church workers, what kind of podcast do you want? So I went to the symposium, like, what kind of podcast do you want? I would go up to strangers and if anybody on campus, because I wanted an idea of what are the needs? What would you actually listen to? Everybody, like most of the responses had to do with getting ready for Sunday morning. So like, I need help writing my sermon. I need help writing my lesson plans. I did not expect to go that direction at all. I was thinking more of having conversations with multiple professors about a point of theology, kind of a topically focused show. But no, everyone's like, I need help with Sunday. So totally changed the directions and started then with Lectionary Kick-start, which that's the name of the show. And I have 2 awesome Haupt profs, Dr. Peter Nafsker and Dr. David Schmidt, every week come in and talk about the lectionary text for that week. Now, I mean, we're like 2 weeks ahead.
Of course, yeah.
So that pastors and teachers can get it ahead of time when they're actually planning. So they come in. It's definitely a first looks show. It's not a exegetical deep dive. It's like, this is the text. Oh, you got to read the article that David wrote about it. He said, it's like you climb a mountain and you're looking out over the valley and you're kind of seeing the whole picture out there and deciding, what it is you see, like deciding where you would want to go. And that's what kind of the point of this show is.
Yeah.
And so they come in and they each say, I would preach on this text. Here's a possible sermon structure I would use. Here's a possible illustration. And they both get a chance to do that. The show is never over 26 minutes long.
26.
That is my goal.
We're a long format over here.
Right?
That's all right. Yeah.
But this different purpose, different
Exactly,
audience,
exactly,
right?
yep.
And I'm technical producer of that show. So I do the recording myself. I do the editing myself.
Sure.
And so it's very focused. So teachers and pastors can listen to this every week, get an idea for the lectionary. And it's been so fun. It's great. And thankfully, God has worked through it, and it has been a felt need that has been met by this. So
That's awesome.
it is so awesome. I'm so glad that I can be a part of people hearing those two guys.
Yeah.
So that's Lectionary Kick-start,
Yep.
which you can find at concordiatheology.org. And then the other one is called Tangible Theology Learned and Lived.
Yeah.
That one started later, and that one is more like the variety show that I thought we would start with. Where I do it twice a month. Every episode is a different professor talking about a different topic.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always about how does their understanding of God and faith intersect with their real life.
Right.
Nice.
So how is their theology tangible, right? The title of the show. Because theology is. Everything is theology. Words about God, understanding who God is, that influences every part of our life.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so the show, the intended audience is anybody who's theologically minded. Church leaders, commissioned church leaders, ordained church leaders, lay church leaders,
Yep.
anybody who's just interested in deepening their theology. So we've had so many awesome profs come in and talk about the way that a theology topic that they're passionate or excited about has played into their life. Like Dr. Joel Olowski came and he talked about the way that a vocal disorder that he's had to deal with has impacted his ministry. Very personal, powerful story.
Wow.
Dr. Kolb, who's one of my heroes, came in and talked about a recent book that he wrote. A local pastor came in and talked about his passion for beekeeping.
Interesting.
And how that vocation of beekeeper became a ministry in his community. And he started urban beekeepers. And so like how his theology of evangelism became real in his life. And it's just, that's the kind of stuff.
I love that.
Nice.
And it's one of those things where, again, we've produced things out of the seminary quite often. Previous president Dale Meyer had I kind of remember the tagline. What was the name of the show, Dale?
Meyer Minute?
Word and Work.
Oh.
Yeah, the intersection. And he would do a cross.
He's been on the show too.
Of,
When are you going to be on the show?
Well, you've never asked me to be on. Anyway, whenever you ask me to be on the show, I would
Be on
love
the show.
As you were
just
saying
asking.
that, I would love to. Yeah, give me a
Crossover.
schedule. But so when Ben and I started Under the Fig Tree in the concept, again, two different people, two different approaches, but we wanted to have these theological moments, and we've had times. If you listen to some of our earlier podcasts, we would try to have series. We've tried, even on when we've changed, we tried to do we tried to throw series in every once in a while. But once Lectionary Kick-start started, and once Tangible Theology got rolling, because we're all serving the same. We serve the church, but once you're in a context and somebody else begins to do a thing that you do and you want to focus, and the point of you doing a thing wants to focus on another thing, just having that added support built into the structure of our life together here at the seminary was so incredible. So again, when former listeners say, when are you going to do another series? I say, we could, but we've begun to focus and to be laser focused on what Under the Fig Tree is. And besides, Lectionary Kick-start is by far better than just because of the two, not just you, but the two men that you have. I mean, Dr. Schmidt, just that short illustration. Listen, I can't do what Dr. Schmidt does, and I don't pretend to, and I'm not, I aspire to, but I know that's a tall mountain to climb, right? And so they're intentional, these two other podcasts doing that. Listen to all three.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because ours is every Monday. Lectionary Kick-start, I imagine.
Kick-start comes out every Monday, and Tangible is the 15th and 30th of every month.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so now you have your full Monday podcasting already pre-scheduled for you.
Yep.
And then every other week, sprinkle in something a little different, get a little taste.
And you don't have to be a preacher or a teacher for Lectionary Kick-start to be valuable. I've had a lot of people say it's their personal devotion.
For sure.
Because it helps them meditate on the text.
Then it comes back every
Sunday.
Yeah,
and then so they meditated on this text, and then on Sunday they hear it and they hear preach about it. So you don't need to be a preacher or teacher for it to be.
And you hear brand new things come to life out of the text. Yeah, that's great stuff. We're now at the point of the podcast where clearly this conversation could go on for much longer.
And it probably should after the show.
Well, and we work together, so we could just have you on again. But I always because again, I've been on the show for much longer, and I always have to push the issue a little bit. Katie,
what's up?
Would you like to ask the last question before we get into our final segment?
Sure. Well, I liked your whole journey and how you never ended up in the classroom, which is nice because I think a lot of people have that experience. And so, I don't know, talk about maybe if you look back, because there's a lot of people on campus now that say, I never thought I'd be a pastor, or I never thought I'd be a deaconess. And their trajectory through their educational career and their professional career is just in a place where they just never saw that coming. Are you happy? I hope you're happy where you ended up, but is there anything that you would tell somebody that's maybe just either they don't know where they're going, they're not where they thought they'd be, something like that?
Absolutely. Because I think it's important for people to know, for young adults to know, that God doesn't always tell you what to do, but he gives you wisdom to guide you. We were just talking about that on Sunday.
Look at that.
When we were talking about the book of Proverbs. Yeah, God gives you wisdom, and sometimes it's just a step. And so stay in the Word, stay connected to God through his Word and his people as he directs you step at a time. You don't need to be afraid that you're going to mess up God's plan by taking the wrong step. Should I go to this school or this school? I'll be off the trajectory of God's plan for me. God has given wisdom to help you take a step at a time, and he will guide your path, right? So don't be afraid that you're locking yourself into something. I ended up never being a classroom teacher, but I teach all the time. I feel like all the media I do is teaching. I'm so glad I had that background, Yeah, God's got plans to use the gifts that he's given you. And I'll look at the camera. Don't be afraid to use those gifts. Don't be afraid to ask God how he wants you to serve in his church or maybe outside of his church. But man, God's got a lot of work to do, and he will enable you to do it. Don't be afraid to be a church worker. If he calls you, he'll enable you. There.
I think that's great. I think that's also, we were having a conversation in our office about, sometimes men call us and they really want to be a pastor, and then their wives are a little hestant.
Oh, sure.
Which, I don't blame them, but I think that's maybe a message that they could hear as well.
That's hard. That's another dynamic that I don't understand as well. The 1 year that my husband was a church worker and I was a student, which is one of his internship, I didn't know how to be a church worker wife at all. That was a new challenge for me to I wish I had known how to do that better. But I know at the seminary, they have mentors to help with that. They've got some great women on campus, professors' wives and wives at fourth year, and even some area pastors' wives that try to help support that ministry, because that is a ministry as well. It is no matter what your husband or your wife does as their vocation, part of your vocation is to support them in that ministry, no matter what kind it is. Yeah. So yes, same thing. If a woman is concerned about becoming a pastor's wife, about her husband coming here, that again, if God calls you, he will enable you. What's that saying? God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called.
Look at that.
Right? Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
You had that question hidden down this whole time.
I did. It popped out.
Well, Jessica, again, we could go on forever. But at some point, the podcast always has to begin to come to an end. So it's not coming to an end just yet. It's on its way.
There's more.
Yes. We can't end without our final little segment called Right for the Pick and Leave It on the Tree. Now, this is where Katie and I are going to take turns listing a bunch of extremely subjective items. So by nature, this is the most important part of the podcast and the most revealing. And if you like said item, you simply reply by saying it's right for the picking. And if you don't like said item, you want to leave it on the tree. And in either case, feel free to explain why, but you don't have to. Sometimes people just don't like things. But I've gotten into the habit of asking the same one first because this is like, what is the secret of life? And so, first of all, right for the picking, leave it on the tree, pineapple on pizza.
Is there a third option?
There's not.
Because sometimes I'd pick it, sometimes I'd leave it. It depends on the mood.
No,
I wouldn't want pineapple on every kind of pizza.
But is it so it's right for the picking or leave it on the tree?
I'll pick it.
All right, it's right for the picking.
That's cool. I'll pick it.
That's maybe a first. No.
You're from St.
What
Louis,
else?
so your pizza preferences are a little bit different than the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Because St. Louis
sketchy.
pizza stinks.
Let's not.
Yeah.
Thank you. See,
No.
she's nodding.
Yeah, it's 2 against 1 here.
Yeah.
Let's not end on a complete negative note. So I am mostly from St. Louis. I wasn't born. I'm not Leslie Note born and raised, but I do like St. Louis style pizza, and I willingly say it's not for everybody. So for people who don't care for it, I do get it. Yeah,
It's different. It's definitely its own
very
different kind of pizza.
But
Yeah.
would you be that gracious about someone who likes pineapple on pizza?
Nah,
Yeah.
it's leave it on the
There
tree
it is.
hardcore for me. It doesn't belong there. Take it off. It's gross. Yeah. Katie used to be on my side, but she's not on my side anymore.
Yeah. Now I say right for the picking,
just to be
make him upset.
controversial. I'm not
Yeah.
upset
Could
about
you
it.
not
I
put
mean,
pineapple
I'm not
on?
going to eat it.
You could put pineapple on anything. It'd be good.
There's a lot of things you can do, but it's more.
But should
It's a
you?
should you. And for some of those things where it seems subjective, sometimes we have to take people's agency away to guard and protect them.
Wow.
Wow.
Take that out of the podcast. That was a little dictatory, but pineapple on pizza. Get it out of here.
Wow.
I choose to still be your friend.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm not a tyrant. I just don't like pineapple on pizza.
That's cool. You don't have to like it.
But I'm not gonna like look at somebody and be like gross out loud. I'll say it in my head all the time.
Don't yuck somebody else's yum. Have you heard of it?
I have heard that, but
I always yuck
yeah.
other people's yum. I'll do another food one
There we go.
if I can find one on my list. I actually don't have a lot. Oh, here's one. Okay. Right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Maple syrup. Not the fake syrup, like the actual maple syrup from the tree.
Again, there should be a third option, a sometimes option. Is there that kind of ripe for the picking? I like it sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I
That's
don't.
fair. All right.
I guess that means if you ever like it, then that's a pick it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess pick it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Okay.
want it on something gross. I mean, I would have it like on certain things.
But you can put it on something.
Usually
gross.
the
You can put it on
best-
your pineapple pizza.
You could.
Pineapple pancakes sound better than syrup on pancakes. I like fruit on pancakes.
Interesting.
Fruit on pancakes with like whipped cream and stuff. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've never considered a pineapple pancake, but
No, it's a fruit.
yeah,
Put fruit on it. Yeah.
fair enough. I love maple syrup.
But like the real maple syrup.
Listen.
Oh, for sure. If
Yeah,
I-
like
if
I do it, it
real
has to be
maple
real.
syrup is
Yeah,
good.
yeah, I
I'll
don't-
eat generic maple syrup.
Okay,
I don't
because
care.
That's
real
like
But-
sugar
but there-
syrup with flavor.
But there is
Like
a
fake
significant distinction between like authentic maple syrup and manufactured stuff.
Yes.
But
yeah, it is
listen,
way different.
I think that the chemicals that we consume will one day give us superpowers, so I'm all for it.
Oh, sure.
Sweet.
I don't actually believe that.
Sweet.
I don't know if people ever take me seriously when I say stuff like that, but anyway.
So
I'll eat both.
actual maple syrup is leave it on the tree for me.
Interesting.
I only eat the fake stuff.
Oh,
but
that's
she's from
why.
but she's from
Yeah.
Indiana.
Where are
though.
you from?
Yeah,
Indiana.
Where-
That's not
where
an
in
Indiana
Indiana?
thing, Fort Wayne.
Oh.
See, now it all makes sense even more.
Did you go to Camp Lakeview when you were a kid?
No, but so my husband's first call was in Greenwood, which is kind
Okay.
of close
Yeah.
to that. We've been there.
2 college summers. I was a counselor at
Nice.
Camp Lakeview.
Yeah.
Lutheran camps. If you're not sure about a church worker job, you could work at a Lutheran camp in the summer, and it gives you great idea of what it would be like in ministry. So that's one thing you could do.
Yeah. So summer camps is a relationship we're building. When you started talking about your Noloma, I wanted to highlight it, but I didn't want to
Yes.
break up your story. And you
Highlight
highlighted
it like crazy.
Yeah. You did a
Life-changing.
great job of showing the importance of it, and it's something that we're becoming more and more involved. I'm blessed. Every year I go to the Noloma conference and spend a
Yes.
few days with their leaders, and it's a great couple days to hear them, it's incredible. I love the people of Noloma deeply.
Yep, me too. Absolutely.
I don't know if I've asked this one since you've been on the show, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. I'm talking about Katie. Anyway, right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Sports docuseries.
Wah, wah.
Okay. I had a feeling you might say that. That's fine. You're a theater kid.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm an artsy nerd. Yeah.
I think it's right for the picking, but I just like docuseries.
Interesting.
So yeah.
I am a docuseries person, but like I'm also like The Last Dance, Michael Jordan's docuseries on Netflix.
Nope.
For any Michael Jordan fans, okay. You know who Michael Jordan is, though.
Who?
Yep.
I'm kidding.
Yep. And I mean, I love sports. I don't know. Everybody likes their thing. All right.
Okay.
We'll leave
All
that one alone.
Right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Napoleon Dynamite.
I'll pick it. When it came out, I thought it was pretty funny. I enjoyed it. Vote for Pedro. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, listen.
Does that put me in a nerd category?
No, I put you in the awesome category.
Yeah.
I love Napoleon Dynamite. It's right for me. I remember the first time watching it and getting to the end and thinking,
What did
I
I just
watch? And sometimes when you watch something like that, you won't give it a second chance.
Yeah. I almost didn't.
But like then when you give it a second chance and you're like looking at all these odd, random things, I think it's a piece of art.
Cinematic
It
masterpiece.
is remarkable.
It's pretty darn good.
It's one of those things that it's just so cleverly bland that
Yeah.
it's not bland at all.
Exactly.
Napoleon Dynamite is incredible. I love it. That's a good one.
Yep.
Interesting. I like you pulling that one out of the woodworks.
Yep.
All right, this will be the last one for me. Right for the picking, leave it on the tree. Water parks.
Oh, that is very hard because I used to love water parks like crazy. Well, the whitewater kayaking I did and stuff. Oh, yeah, so fun. You get a rush. On our honeymoon, my husband let us go to a water park because I was like, I love water parks. And I was crazy. But now I've taken my kids there and I hate them.
Okay.
And I get terrified when they climb the stairs up to those crazy things where they're going to go on loops. And I'm like,
Oh.
wear a life jacket. Be careful. So I guess maybe I've changed my mind. I don't like to do things that make me scared anymore.
Oh, sure.
Where I used to be like, oh, this is a thrill. But now it's like, I don't want to be scared. So I guess I used to pick it off the tree, but now I will leave it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Do you pick them? Do you guys like water parks?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's on my list, so I just had to cross it
Hey.
off. But yeah, it's ripe for the picking. I haven't been to one in a really long time. But you're from Wisconsin. I used to go to Wisconsin Dells.
That's where you should go
I've
for
heard of
water
it.
parks. Yeah.
100%.
You can go camping, and then you can go to Noah's Ark or Family Land.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
my
would
kids love
stay
it.
at Wilderness. That's the one we would stay at.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, if you're going to do water parks, that's the place to
Yep.
go. It's beautiful.
It's right for me. I love amusement parks. I love roller coasters. And for a while, just didn't actively do it, and especially when the kids were really little. Because, I mean, yeah, the kiddie rides, that would be leaving on the tree. But now they're old enough to go on roller coasters. And I didn't know how they would react to it, but they're roller coaster junkies. So being a part of their joy and excitement for it is like kind of renewed my energy. And then the same with water parks. They love like the slides and stuff like that. And so having that thing that they love that we can connect in has made it like it's given me a different attitude and aspect of it, but like in a fatherly. So when they're going up the dangerous steps and the fast slides, I'm like, yeah, let's do this, guys, because this is awesome.
Good for you. I get freaked out. I don't want them to get hurt.
They're going to bump their heads and they're going to fall and hurt themselves. That's what mothers are for. I let them bump their heads. What are they going to do?
That's what my
That's how you
husband
learn.
says
Yep,
too.
Yep.
Okay, I got one more. Right for the picking or leave it on the tree. Flavored seltzer waters.
Pick it every day.
Okay.
I love fizzy water. Yeah. I love it. It's good. There's no calories. There's no sugar.
Do you have a favorite flavor?
Pamplemousse?
Okay. Brand-wise, there's a local grocery store called Schnucks, and the Schnucks brand fizzy water is my favorite.
Okay.
It is pretty good.
It's extra fizzy, and it's extra better price.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm all about it.
Sure.
Come home, and instead of eating a bunch of snacks, have one of those. Or
Yep.
it's a special treat for my kids to get them.
Nice.
Because it's just, kind of more expensive than tap water.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big treat if we're having pizza night. We all get a fizzy
Oh,
water.
yeah.
What
Nice.
flavor do you like?
I like a bunch of different kinds. Pamplemousse is grapefruit, right?
Ah.
Yeah.
Love grapefruit.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have strawberry mango right now from Schnucks.
Nice.
So
Their cherry lime is really good.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're right for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten to a habit. I drink coffee and water, and sometimes tea, almost exclusively. But yeah, seltzer water is nice. I still will occasionally have a soda, but not frequently, and almost always regret it these days now.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say cherry lime. If I had to pick a flavor, cherry lime is just a banging combination. It's hard to beat in almost all things. Cherry lime is really
It's
good.
pretty good. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, look at that, other than the pineapple on pizza. But, Jessica, before we sign off, we always like to ask our guests, if there was one piece of advice that you had for anybody who was considering church work as a career, whether it be pastor, deaconess, teacher, DCE, and the like, what would that one piece of advice be?
I would say if you're considering church work, that you would focus, stay connected to God through His Word, and continue to pray, because if maybe you shouldn't be in church work, maybe you should and you don't know that you should, but the way that God talks to us is through His Word and through His people, and the way that we talk to Him is through prayer, and that conversation is what should lead you to or away from church work, if depending on the gifts that He's given to you. So stay in the Word.
Yeah. Great advice. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
It was wonderful.
And we're tremendously blessed by having you a part of the CSL community as a colleague. And thank you again for producing Lectionary Kick-start, which comes out every Monday, as well as Tangible Theology, which comes out every 15th and
15th and the 30th.
There we go. I almost said 29th, but 30th makes way more sense than that.
We're on all the major podcast hosting apps.
Yep.
But also can find it at concordiatheology.org if you can't find it on your app.
There you go. Check it out. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Under the Fig Tree. And of course, if you're listening and you are going through that discernment process, whether or not you should or shouldn't pursue church work, don't think. Make sure you click the link in the description if you're watching on YouTube, or find a request for information at csl.edu on the admissions page. Fill out that request for information. It's free, and the conversation that follows is free, and it's also not obligatory that once you reach out to us that you have to become a student, but we'll be glad to have a conversation with you and be another brother or sister of Christ walking through that discernment process with you, because we're the body. We're not meant to do this alone. But if you know and you've already gone through that discernment process or not, but you're not, church work isn't for you, but you've always looked across the pew and you thought that person would be a great pastor, teacher, deaconess, or the like, make sure you tell them, because you could be that person who gives them that extra encouragement to pursue a life of church work and continue to be a blessing in a different way for all of us, for all of our sakes. And just because we're at that time of the year, Vocatio High School is June 22nd through 29th. Registration is filling up, so if you're thinking about it, just like a request for information, don't think too long. Make sure you go to our page, csl.edu, and go to the visit portion of the admissions page and find Vocatio High School. That's for students who are about to graduate 8th grade through students who have graduated high school. Registration is $100. It's an incredible week that you don't want to miss out on. And secure your spot. Go and register now. And then hang out. And who knows? You might get an opportunity to ask right for the picking or leave it on the tree while you're here. But nonetheless, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time under the fig tree. Take care.